Grand Rising, everyone. How you doing? This is your coach Renz. If you find me for the first time, this is the Deconstructing channel. I'm going to take the first 5 minutes to get everything set up and let people get on, and then you want to go and skip to that. That's when you'll be good to go as far as watching this after the live is over. At least about 5 minutes. But we are going to talk about today how disrespectful this book is to women. Got everything taken care of on that side, on this side, on that side, on that side. Glad you come in. Let me know who you are, where you at. Grand Rising in reverse. Oh, what a wonderful day, a wonderful day, a wonderful day. Willie, how you doing, sir? How you doing? How you doing? Beautiful little fall day outside. And today we are going to get into a discussion. I was, why did I put that there? I was doing some research last night for a series of short videos that I was planning on doing about how much this book hates women. There's more of a demonstration of that, how women are disregarded in this book. They don't have rights in this book, how they're treated unfairly. And I was reminded of, while I was researching last night, I hit upon and was reminded of one story that I thought, we got to talk about this story. Because this was sad. So I was like, we got to talk about this. This whole sequence of events. I think it got started. So this is just a terrible, terrible. How do these people think that this is God ordained? That when they say everything is written by the Bible, for and through the Bible, they get into these certain stories. I'm like, come on, man. What does this have to do with anything? What does the necklace mean? What this one? So this just has a pyramid with the eye of Ra in it, all-seeing eye. Pyramid is one of the strongest geometrical structures in the world or in the universe. And the all-seeing eye, just having your third eye open for knowledge, is what it means to me. It might mean something else to somebody else. Or if you talk about this one, this is the hand of Hansama. Or what's called the hand of Mary, when Christians wore it in the Dark Ages. Before the Renaissance. No, during the Renaissance. No, the Middle Ages when Christian women were. Just this original intent was people warding off people's negative energy. And just read the first 4 chapters of the Quran, and it has amazing rebuttals to the Israelites and the history of their era. I haven't read the Quran in 30 years. So you got that. But that's something, I can check it out. Today we have millions upon millions of women following a fake religion. Yep. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And every time I when a woman comes to me and she's like, no, they fight harder. Yo, you're going to hell. And I'm like, y'all, as a woman, you must really not read this book. You must. It's one thing when you're talking about slavery in this book, and every what we call race of people, this thing is not going to do what I want to do. Every what we call race of people can look into their history and find some slavery in their history. Whether your ancestors were enslaved by the Romans or Greeks, or and yes, this thing is all jacked up, or any other group. Everybody's history, Japanese enslaving the Chinese, Chinese enslaving the Japanese, however you want to do it. But everybody group has some levels of enslavement. This thing is getting on my nerves because it don't want to act right. But a woman is a woman, no matter what. The when it talks and the way it treats women, that's just being a woman, And for the life of me, I have never understood how women follow this religion. Mm-mm. From the very beginning, women get blamed for everything in this book. Let's just think about it. The woman gets blamed for the fall. The woman, her punishment is to be under the subjugation of her husband. That's straight Genesis 3:16. People like John 3:16, Genesis 3:16. What man here? Where is it? Where did I leave off? I'm not gonna get you too far off the subject. Well, I'm not gonna say that women are gods on earth, because then now you're trying to put one over the other. There's no competition. There's no competition. Yeah, religion in itself is not for women, because almost every religion tries to subjugate women. I don't think a woman is closer to source than a man is closer to source. It doesn't. You are as close to source as the being that you are. You decide. Like, there are men who are closer to source than there are women who are closer to source. Just being a woman doesn't make you closer to source. Right? Christian women have no defense and get mad. And the defense that they will use against 1 Timothy 2:12, because it tells women to be silent and be subjugated to your man, it's just and submit, is the fact that they'll then throw, oh well, women, your sons and daughters will prophesy and testify. Prophesy and preach. But that is only in the end times, so it's still not an adequate defense. Right. He could be sinful, he could be horrible, but she still got to obey this man. He could be he can do all sorts of things, but she still got to be in subjugation to him. And there's nothing in this book that benefits them. Oh man, y'all just going in. Ain't even got started yet with the part that I want to talk about, the primary part. Y'all are going in already. But they do force that all women submit to something after all. You're saying one, I understand what you're saying. One had to be here before the other. That's only, we would never know. Actually, I don't think that one was here before the other. I think it was probably some type of asexualness or something. Nobody would know who was here before the other. So to claim one over the other, or just because a woman has a womb to make her the first one, doesn't make any sense. It's just as much making sense as saying a man was here first because he had the seed. You have to have both male seed and egg in order to produce. So neither one has any claim over the other. Just because one carries the child doesn't mean that makes them more special. Shit. To me, that's more of a burden. Yep, both genitals are gateways. It doesn't matter. Yeah. Why do you think they hate women so much? Because women is more powerful. Because woman is more powerful. I don't think one was before the other though. And oh my God, y'all. Hell, I could just sit here and not say a damn thing. All right, watch you. A debate between Holy Bible and Quran. That'd be interesting. For the Quran was nothing making the Holy Bible the real teaching of Jesus. Christ, but there's so many. That'll be interesting to watch that. Someone is listening to a woman pastor. The male wasn't made for the female. Forgot that verse. Grand Risers. Why? Y'all just. I like. I gotta say I like this group. All I gotta do is turn this some bitch on and give a little bit of information and bam, y'all go. I thought it was Zachariah Sitchin that said that man was here, that the sin said man was here before man. That woman was here before man. It's not so much that Zachariah Sitchin said that woman was here before men. Um, as a matter of fact, what they did was they took the embryo out of, according to the Sumerian Anunnaki story, they took an embryo out of the hominid, put it into a female Anunnaki, and produced children. But he just says it produced Adapa and Titi, or Adamu, but he just says it produced both. But they produce both male and female. But whether they produced a female first or a male first doesn't really matter. What does it matter that if the Anunnaki's cloning process produced a female first before it produced a male, it wouldn't matter. That doesn't give female more closer access to source if you go that route. Oh, I asked him with no answer. So that's the scarlet hand. You didn't hear me say that this is the hand of Hansama. That it has held many meanings throughout time. When Christians wore it was called the hand of Mary, which they thought it warded off. It was helpful for fertility and warded off crib death. So I did answer. You just didn't catch it. Just listening, Debbie. So, well, that was an interesting first 15, 14 minutes or so. My whole damn introduction is just thrown off. So if you're finding me for the first time, it doesn't usually spark off into conversation like that. Usually I got to talk about 15 minutes before people get into the conversation. But goddamn, Bible hates women. We're going right into it. Thank you, Energy Shift, Grand Rising. You know, I got it. The fall is coming in, so I got to get the last of my little summer pop off, you know. So this book, consistently throughout this book, um, it demonstrates how much it disregards women and treats women as second class citizens. And for the life of me, always tried to understand why women are the most devoted to this book. Now, women, I understand that, biology and psychology would tell us that uh, most, not all, most women are more emotional based creatures, and most men are logic based creatures, left hemisphere, right hemisphere. And I understand that. But maybe they just don't read this book, or they so easily swerve, and many of the stories are not even told, or they skip through them really quickly about how women are so disregarded in this book. Um, how they will reframe it, and because people's fear of going to hell, they will hold on to this, even though the reframe is still not justifiable at all, not even slightly. And although I've written down about, I'm gonna say 15, 16 different pieces of scripture um, that I wrote down for a different video, not for today. But there's one portion of this that I did want to talk about today as one of the most, it's heinous, it's disrespectful in a whole story. And some of the most some of the women who I see are the most subjugated in any formation of Christianity, especially in the Black community, is Hebrew Israelites, right? I have, you go to you go to a Baptist church, a Catholic church, a Protestant, AME, any of those churches, the women will, they're submissive to a certain degree, you know. But them when I see the Hebrew Israelite situation, they are far more submissive than any other branch of Bible followers that I've ever seen. Right? Far more. They right there with some of with the Shiite Muslim women. They right at that Shiite Muslim woman level. And of course, they have many things that if they read it, they might understand why this book treats women so heinously, instead of grasping onto the few times that a woman is given some kind of respect. Like when Moses changed the law so that women can inherit their father's property. Now, of course, they weren't able to do this for an incredibly long time. They couldn't inherit anything from the father. If the woman didn't have um, a husband or something of that nature, and the husband died and didn't have a son, everything would go to the husband's brother. But these 4 women protested to Moses supposedly, and they changed the law. But from up until Moses, women didn't get shit. You didn't own nothing. You couldn't own anything. Well, yeah, 3 things to address. The word of helpmate is a word only used of God in any of the other places in the Old Testament birth records I'm mentioning, usually only. And yet, for we are listening in the large lineage of Jesus. Yet 4 are listed in the lineage of Jesus, and which are Gentiles, as I understand it, that women's testimony was considered hurtful. To one's case, yes, a woman's testimony is hurtful to her case. Like a woman is not trustworthy. That's why when Mary Magdalene claimed, "Oh, Jesus rose," Peter was like, "Yeah, you're a woman. Ain't nobody taking your word for it." Yet Scripture does not hide that women were Okay, so when they say try to say women were the first to the tomb, this is another combative a way that women try to come back and say, well, women were the first to the tomb, and Jesus spoke to women first. Women were the first to the tomb because it's a woman's job to go and anoint the body more after its death, because handling a dead body to Israelites makes you unclean. So women can go do it and make themselves unclean. So it's like a lower level job. It's not a wonderful thing about women being the first one at the tomb. That's like she the piss girl. Like in ancient and back in the day, you had a piss boy who walk around with a piss bucket, or the chambermaid who came and she emptied the piss buckets and the shit buckets. It's a shitty job to have to go and touch to the tomb and touch the bodies. So that's not a justification of the gloriousness of women. And then when the angels and in two other stories, Jesus talked to Mary Magdalene, what did he tell the women? Go tell my dudes to meet me here. Didn't give her any great insight. Didn't say something, magnificent. Just told them, hey, look here, woman. Go and tell my dudes where to meet me at. Make sure they there. Okay, so she became an errand girl. It's not a great thing that's not something that women should stand on and say, see, this God, women were the first to the tomb. This God spoke to women first, and that's not even, and they try to confuse them. So I've heard some preachers say that was the Great Commission. All right, that wasn't the Great Commission. The Great Commission came later. So no. When they come to me with that argument, it is easily kicked to the curb. And yeah, according to this Bible, they blame women for sin. They did it in the Old Testament. They do it in the New Testament. They said because it was woman. It was not Eve who ate first. And they blame the woman for bringing sin into the world and being under the submission of her husband. The story of Mary is in the tablets. Woman didn't need men to have babies. Mary's mother also had Mary without a mate. That's a Catholic myth that was made up centuries and centuries and centuries after. That was made up in order to create some type of divinity in Mary so that you can have a woman who is not impure. And then God can enter into the womb of a woman, providing the seed as the Holy Spirit, so that he can enter into someone who is already pure. But that doesn't even work in itself, because the Bible clearly states in Proverbs, it talks about how can anything pure come out of the impurity of a woman? And his answer was no, because just the process of a woman giving birth is deemed impurity. But that story about Mary being born from her mom without the use of a man is a made up story from the Catholic Church in the around about the Middle Ages. So no, and that's why they worship Mary as well. And it's virtually impossible for a woman to produce a baby without a male seed if she's a woman. Now, if it's a hermaphrodite, but yet they claim to be a woman, then that is the only and most exceptional way that a woman, what you or I may say is a woman based on visual looking, but truly it's a hermaphrodite. A hermaphrodite is the only thing asexual that can produce that. And that is a birth defect. Well, we call that a birth defect in today's world. So, but no woman who is born just straight XX chromosomes can produce a baby without having a male seed. It is not going to work. It might be a lower level job, but if you only try to talk about the resurrection, ignore the part that only telling the man's what? It might be a lower level job, but if you're only trying to talk about the resurrection, ignore that part and only telling the men's part. I don't even understand your point. I don't understand your point on that one, Charles. Maybe I'm just not getting it in what you're trying to say. But if you ignore that part and just talk about the resurrection, then it depends on what version of the resurrection you want to talk about, because there are multiple versions of the resurrection. It all don't happen the same way. There are different aspects to it. They got them. So I'm not sure what you're trying to say on that one. Grand Rise, Renee, how you doing? Valentino, how you doing? But we're not talking about the resurrection today. Not right, at least not right now. What we're talking about is I still ain't got to the goddamn main story that I wanted to focus on. Because when I go over and think about this story, it's so bad in general, and then it's consistently disrespectful to women. And I know it's an Old Testament story. It wasn't from the Catholic Church. It was written on the tablets in Egypt, nothing to do with religion. I've only heard that story from Catholics. I've never heard or read anything. If you can tell me what tablets in Egypt, I will gladly go research that. And if I'm wrong, I don't have no problems coming back and saying that I was wrong. Oh, let me turn this volume off. But there's, I don't recall. When I first was hearing about that and was told about that and studied that, that was from the Catholics. I'm all for new information. Shit, you have piqued my interest. I can't see. Because, I mean, effectively, you're talking about that Mary was born without original sin, right? Mary being free of original sins, Mary was born, Jesus' conception being miraculous, the concept of immaculate conception, and that marriage was conceived without sin while the pre-embryo, circa 20 BCE. A single grace granted by God Almighty in the marriage of Jesus Christ and Savior, here race preserved. Yeah, everything I'm saying about Mary's birth is, and I know this is a quick search, but it's all Catholic. The origin of it is Catholic. But if you can tell me what Egyptian specifically. Oh, Billy Carson talks about it. Okay, I'll search for it, but not right now because it would take me too much time to search for it. But David Williamson just made a very complete statement. Christianity disrespects women because the initial authors didn't value them. They did not. They did not value women at all. And that leads me to Judges. Judges 19. Now, this is a whole story that goes from Judges 19:22 all the damn way to Judges 21:23. Right? Okay, hold on. Before I go there, let me see what, because I couldn't understand what Charles was saying. My point is, you don't have to mention the women at all. They were more interested in the whole story versus the best part of the witnesses. You're correct about the Immaculate Conception of Mary. Catholic theology makes Mary a core, yeah, coordinatrix. Coordinatrix. Don't know that word. I have to look that one up. But and they were more yes, Christians are more interested in it, but it's also, but women will use that as a defense as to why the Bible does respect women. And that's why I brought that part up, is that it's not a defense for the Bible respecting women. It's actually even more disrespectful in how the women were treated in the resurrection story. But Judges, how many of you have read Judges 19:22 to 21:23? Let me give you a little hint, little clue. It is very similar to the story of Lot, to Sodom and Gomorrah. It has elements of the Sodom and Gomorrah story. So it would appear that the writers of Judges were leaning on the retelling of the Lot story, just using different characters and such. And then after they said, not me. Afterward, so let me just break it down to you. And I'm going to give you the short version, the Ren's version, but you can go back and read it. So it's Judges 19, verses 22, all the way through Judges 21, up to verse 23. So here's basically what happened. So you had a man, he came into a city, kind of like the angels came into the city with Lot. Came into this city of the Benjamites in, I think it's Gilead or Gahad or stuff with the G. Came into the city. He was going to sleep outside with his concubine, but a man came to him and said, no, don't do that. You might get roused. So he invited them into his house. The man goes into the house with him. Then the neighbors come. The men come from the city and they're banging on the door and they're saying, hey, bring us that man that stranger that came to your house. Sounds familiar, right? I'm not talking about Sodom and Gomorrah. This is a whole nother city. Bring that man so we can rape him. And they say straight up, take his booty. We need to take this man's booty because he came into our town. So the owner of the house goes outside and says, hey. And here comes the first disrespect to women. Hey, don't do this to this guy who just came here. But I tell you what, I'll give you my virgin daughter and his concubine, and y'all can do whatever y'all want with him. Sounds familiar, right? You had Lot offering his daughters in lieu of the two angelic beings. So it's a kind of a copy. But it's a little different. The men first like, nah, but he give them the virgin daughter and the concubine, and they assault these women all night long. And these other two jokers just go back in the house and go to sleep, drink their wine, eat their bread. They go back to sleep. It says that when the man woke up the next morning, he goes outside, opens the door. His concubine is laying there with her hand on the threshold. It makes a point to say that her hand was on the threshold. And that he told her, get up, let's go. She don't get up. He tosses her over the horse because she's unalive at this moment. Tosses her on the horse, goes back to his home, cuts her up into 12 pieces. Sends each one of those pieces out to the tribes of Israel, saying, look at what this tribe of Benjamin in this city has done. It is disrespectful. And they are all enraged. They're outraged that they have done this to this man, taken his concubine and done this to her. The fact that he offered the concubine should have been enough. Then that in itself, women should say, how disrespectful. So they want to rape, they want to sexually assault the man, but they give them the virgin daughter and the concubines. That right there, women should just be like, oh, hell no. We're not getting down to this. So they go on about they send these things out. Well, then the tribes have meetings and they pissed off and they go and decimate this town, right? But when they decimate the town, they kill all the men. Y'all know how this part goes. They kill all the men. They kill all the fighting men. They kill all the boys. They kill all the women who have known a man. But then they keep the virgin girls and make wives out of them. And you know how you make a wife back in this day. Well, because they decimated this town, the other tribes of Benjamin are left, and they don't have enough wives for themselves. So because you've taken all these women from the other tribes of Benjamin. So it's like subset tribes. And so they have this meeting, and all the 12 tribes are supposed to meet. But one group doesn't come. And they like, oh shit. Well, since that group didn't come, they go to God, and they say, God, we need wives for these people. And so first they go to war against, let me go back. First they go to war against some of the tribes of Benjamin. They kill and they take a whole bunch of women from them. They go to war specifically to get wives, right? To get wives. And when they do this, they only got like 400 wives. That wasn't enough. So then they go have a meeting. They go to God and say, hey, again, and say, like, one of the tribes didn't show up, and we still need some more wives. Now, this story y'all probably heard of. And then so they're told these women are going to be dancing. And when these virgins come out and they're dancing in Shiloh, you go out there, you capture them, take them back to your town, make them your wives. And then when the other men get mad, those fathers get mad, we're going to say, look, they didn't have enough wives after we killed all of them. The other tribe, they didn't have enough. So just be cool with it. Just be all right. And there's a ton more detail in this story, but that's like a basic idea of what happened in this story. I do want you guys to go read it for yourself. But these women are just grabbed up, done with however these men choose. They don't have a choice in the matter. If you've known a man, if you've had sex with a man, you're deemed unfit to be somebody else's wife. So that part you can't have. The city is Gibeah. I just want to make sure I said the right city where they gave up the virgin girl and the concubine. But a woman's body, a woman's right to choose her husband, they don't give two rats' asses about that as far as what your concerns of. Love don't matter. Who gives a shit about love? And the right for these women to choose, for these other women I want to make sure I'm saying it right. So none of the people from Jabesh Gilead were there. So it's the Jabesh Gilead tribe that they went and they killed every male and every woman who was not a virgin, and they kept the virgin. And then they went to the camp at Shiloh in Canaan. That's where they had their assembly. And then they went out and they snatched up these women. Yeah. And Now, I know some people just read Judges 19 and then they just go to the cutting off and it looks just like the Lot story. But all that whole thing is all attached. How is one? What's the significance? Why is this God allowing these kinds of things? Like, because in this, they go to this guy and this guy's like, yeah, go do it. Go handle that. Do exactly that. And then if you destroyed the women, think about this logic. The men of Benjamin cut up this concubine. You go destroy and take from Benjamin, but then you go and destroy and take from somebody else to replenish the women for the tribe of Benjamin. How much sense does that make? It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't jive right. I want you guys to go and read that story for yourself, and but I gave you the basic outline for that story. But just on that basic outline, what do you think about that story? Renee had already said a while before as soon as you cut up the concubine, as soon as they gave him the concubine and the virgins. Yeah. Like in both these stories, a lot, and in this story, they rather protect the man's booty hole by throwing their daughters out into the wind, throwing women out there like, hey, instead of raping this man, instead of assaulting this man, have at the women. We can always get some more of them, but a man, we can never defile a man. But defiling a woman, that's fine. I need you to do, if you haven't already, give us some background of Mary. Who is Mary? Does she have siblings? Her parents? Status in the community? Her age? Why does half the planet believe her? Why did God pick her? Why would the natives all over the planet have to believe in her? That'd be interesting. The hardest part about Mary, though, is that most of it is made up stuff. It's what church fathers believe should be. There's not a lot of it's what later writers started creating about her. But it's worth a look. I'm studying the Bible and Quran. Look up John Henry Clarke. He talks about the Africa and the Bible. I listened to John Henry Clarke back in the day. I'm cool with him until he started getting into like the Bible came out of Africa. Like, no, hell, did Christianity was in Africa? No. Roman Christianity is just a bastardized version of African Christianity. Nah, bro. Christianity was originally with Ethiopia, with the Aksum Empire. It was a shipwrecked Christian dude who came there. Egypt was part of the Roman Empire, so it doesn't count. That's Roman Christianity, So Egypt doesn't count as Egypt Christianity was in Africa before it was in Rome in Europe. No, it's the same goddamn time. It's the same time because it was under the Roman Empire that Christianity was in Egypt. So that doesn't count as being in Africa first. As far as going to Ethiopia, it's 300 years, about 300 years after the Jesus supposedly lived, that it went into Ethiopia. It's over 300 years after it went into Ethiopia. So that whole story about, now, did some Judaism go into Ethiopia before then? That was a little bit. Were there some Christians who was running from Roman, who thought that Rome was going to persecute them and may have went to Ethiopia? It's possible, but there's really no proof of it. First proof of Christianity in Ethiopia is the Aksum Empire, which is not until after the Council of Nicaea that happens. Right before Rome makes Christianity the only religion of Rome. And it was done for political purposes. Beyond that, Christianity was forced through colonization and beating and subjugation. So when people like John Henry Clark started getting into that, I'm like, hell, okay, bro, I was with you here, but I'm not with you over there. This is why I tell y'all, I don't agree with everything I say. You don't have to. You shouldn't. Mm-hmm. And some of these scholars, so-called scholars, right? And I say so-called scholars for this reason. They are scholastic up until the point where they each one of them have a point where the truth is only the truth up until a point where if I continue in this truth, I'm going to lose a large audience. I'm going to be considered, I'm going to have a lot of people attacking me. See, like I could never reach those high heights of popularity. I could not. Because let me give you an example. Nothing against the guy. He does his thing. I'm not hating on him at all. But Ralph Smart, I know some of y'all know who Ralph Smart is, right? I don't know what Louisa is saying no to. Louisa. What she's saying no to. But Ralph Smart, love the guy. Happy go lucky, love the guy. He knows that he has to go right there. Because if he goes above this level, then all the other religious people who are supporting his thought process, his speech, they're not going to support him. So you got a whole lot of Christians who are walking around talking about some breathing in that good ass prana and, you know, the cat down the road and talking about the things, not realizing that what he's talking about is from different religions. But because he doesn't go against any religion, just kind of stays kind of vague in the gray areas, he got millions of subscribers. Then left London, moved to LA first, then went to Hawaii, living life fantastic. Got the whole thing about the YouTube plaque for hitting 1 million subscribers. I have no jealousy, nothing like that. I could have, you know, if you stay here, you can get that. But when you start challenging Christianity, you're not going to get those kinds of followers. You're going to lose a lot of people. People ain't going to be, you know, your opportunity scope, your scope of opportunity is much smaller. You have a smaller niche of people that's going to follow you and all this sort of thing. And that's fine with me. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. So people who are these scholars, they know if I want to sell these books, if I want to be on these tours, I want to do all these kinds of things like that, be bigger in the public limelight, I got to stop right here. Even somebody mentioned Billy Carson. Billy Carson only goes so far in talking about Christianity. He only goes so far. He won't, you know, they all do. If you want to be bigger, you have to hit there's a limit, but I just don't give a shit. So when I read some of these scholars, I look at how far are they willing to go for the truth. Is popularity and fame more important than facts being facts? And for me, it's facts being facts. And don't get me wrong, it's tempting. There was a time frame where I was tempted. I was tempted to be like, you know, there are some of my videos back 8 years ago where I can tell, and you may be able to tell the temptation of being more mainstream. Because I thought about it and I was like, and it was during a very low financial point in my life, and I was like, is sticking with the facts more important than having a roof over my head, having some food. I mean, I had a roof, but you know what I'm saying. It's like I can keep on this level of life, or I can flex this way. Oh, there's some videos I can go back and look at. I can tell. I can say, look, yeah, I was trying to be that guy at that moment. I had a moment, but no, I can't. Uh, but anyway, back to the subject matter here. I was hoping that through all my little chattering right there, that some of y'all would, oh, somebody gave a crying face. Why's the crying face on Facebook? But I was hoping that some of y'all would tell me, what do y'all think about that whole story of and Judges of this guy? I mean, first of all, you can tell the first beginning of it. We're going to use the template of Lot's story, change it up a little bit for the justification of these Israelite tribes fighting against each other and stealing each other's wives, but we need a catalyst. And the catalyst is going to be them assaulting his concubine. Notice when you read this story, they're not going to mention nothing else about this daughter, about the daughter of the guy, the virgin daughter. She was cast out to them dudes, and they and you don't know if she lived, you don't know if she died, you have no idea of anything. And oh, I think Louisa might have just been answering the question for the title of this video. Does the Christian God like women? And maybe she was saying that. But the virgin daughter who was assaulted, nothing else is said about her. It's because women aren't important. Y'all don't get names unless something's going to happen. You know, the only reason Dana was named is because she was violated, and then it excused them to go and murder a whole town and kill every genocide, a whole town of people. Another story that they tried that they hate this story. Now, usually this is talking about women sacrifice. I mean, human sacrifice. But this guy doesn't mind human sacrifice. And this is a story with, what is it, Japheth? Japheth's daughter. How many of you guys know the story of Japheth's daughter? Come on now. I know some of y'all know the story of Japheth's daughter. Oh, y'all was talking all in the first 15 minutes. Now y'all don't want to say nothing? How many of y'all know the story with Japheth's daughter? Let me see exactly where that's in this book so that when y'all go look at it, you'll know. Maybe I'm saying the name wrong. Yep. Yeah. Japheth's daughter. That story is in where's that story? It's in Judges. Oh, so Judges is all kind of jacked up. So that has to be Judges 11. Gotta be the part of Judges. Grand Rising Norman. Not me again. I don't. Enya, he does. Talking about the daughter who wailed her virginity. Wailed her virginity? You were probably talking about the same one. It's Judges 11. This is the daughter. This is the man. So yeah, because of her father's covenant. Yes. So the funny part about this to me is the fact that other times I've talked about this story, I talked about it in the framework of this guy doesn't mind human sacrifices. Because if this God is all knowing, then he knew what was going to come out of the door first. And Japheth, it was a stupid deal. He was dumb anyway. So basically, the story in Judges 11, I'm pretty sure it's Judges 11. The way it goes is that Japheth, whatever his name is, he was getting ready to go into battle against the Amorites. And he was telling God, he was doing one of them, God, if you just let me win against the Amorites. Yeah, this is 11. If you just let me win against the Amorites. 11:30. So it goes like this. And Japheth made a vow to the Lord. If you give the Amorites into my hands, whatever comes out the door of my house to meet me when I return in triumph from the Amorites will be the Lord's. I will sacrifice it. Listen to the words. I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering. As a burnt offering. So Japheth went and he went over to fight the Amorites, and the Lord gave them into his hands. He devastated 20 towns from Aor to the vicinity of Minnith, and as far as Abel Karim. Thus Israel subdued Ammon. When Japheth returned to his home in Mitzvah, who should come out to meet him but his daughter, dancing with sounds and trembles? She was an only child, except for her he had no sons nor daughters, which is what only child means. When he saw her, he tore his clothes and cried, "Oh no, my daughter, you have brought me down and I am devastated. I have made a vow to the Lord that I cannot break." "My father," she replied, "you have given your word to the Lord. Do to me as you promised. Now that the Lord has avenged you and your enemies, the Amorites. But grant me one request," she said. "Give me 2 months to roam the hills and weep with my friends, because I will never marry." "You may go," he said, and he let her go for 2 months. She and her friends went into the hills and wept because she would never marry. I'm pretty sure they got it on. After the 2 months, she returned to her father, and he did to her as he had vowed, and she was a virgin. Yeah, throw that part in there. And it's interesting. From this comes the Israelite tradition that each year the young women of Israel go out for 4 days to commemorate the daughter of Japheth of Gilead. Japheth the Gileadite. So it says, he did to her as he had vowed. What did he vow? He vowed, "I will sacrifice it as a burnt offering." So, sacrifice, human sacrifice to this deity for helping him destroy or fight against the Ammonites. Human sacrifice. But not only just human sacrifice, but this guy understood and knew it was going to be a girl, his daughter, who come run out the door. What dumbass thought could he have had? He burnt his daughter like toast. I know I'm laughing, but yes. But what did he think was going to come out his door first? A pig? A goat? A lamb? A bull? That was dumb. That was like whoever wrote this story must have thought the audience is just gonna be like, oh, wow, wow, you're telling a great story. Wow. It's like I've been sitting there, I was like, what? What the hell he think gonna come out his door when he come home from the battle? If he either his wife gonna come out or his daughter come out. So either he was trying to set his wife up because it's like I don't like this chick. That's my only thought. He had to be trying to set his wife up. I don't know if he had a wife. Did he have a wife? I'm sure he had a wife. But like, this joker don't make sense. So I'm thinking he was trying to set his wife up, but the daughter beat the wife out the door because you know how how daughters are towards their daddies, and it backfired on him. Jay felt the Italian word for Geppetto, Pinocchio's father, the wood carver. But yeah, I'm just saying it's a dumb story, but in that story, and then the girl is just like, okay, father, just let me go hang out with my friends for 2 months. Shh. Let me tell you something. If I had made that promise and one of my girls, they'd be like, oh, yeah, dad, let me go out for 2 months. 4 months now. I know 2 months and I'll be back. I would never see my daughters again. They'd be like, that's crazy as hell. But it also displays how, are you saying that women are so, oh, I got to do what this God said? Now, other times men debate against God. Abraham debating against God. Jacob wrestling with God. Men questioning God. Moses, dude, you sure you want to send me? I can't even talk right. These other jokers, they like, hey. But when they show women, they show them so docile towards God most of the time. Most of the time. They so docile. Oh, yes, Father, I will be sacrificed. Zipporah, oh, you about to kill my husband? Let me chop off my son's foreskins to save my husband. Women, no, women are built better than that. Women are mentally stronger than that, than the way they portray in this Bible. But I watch women give in to it though. You got a husband, he's beating your ass, and you won't let it go. You won't let him go. Trying to be covered by some dude. You cover your damn self. I remember that part of the Bible. The most I've read up in the Bible is Esther. What the Bible verses of the book was thought that the father had to sacrifice his daughter as a burnt offering. Yeah. That's Judges 11. That was the whole thing we were just talking about. Judges 11. You get to the 30 verses 30 through 39 is where the burning starts. Yeah. So let me just get started. So last night I was like, you know what? I'm going to do a whole series on how the Bible hates and disrespects women. And so I started combing through for different verses that I could come out off the dome. This is how many verses I came up with just last night while Angelina was making dinner. I was like, I came up with those. I came up with those. Then I came with those. So I'm like, there's just a lot. And that's not even all the ones that I know if I went and researched, I know there's a lot more. Those are just the ones I could like just popped in my head at the time frame. If I went and actually like research some of them, it'd be a hell of a lot more. But it just demonstrates all of this stuff. I mean, where women are just mistreated in this book and looked down upon, and women just follow it. Like there's verses that talks about, a lot of these verses talk about if the husband, when he gets with his wife for the first time, if he's not pleased with her, he can kick her to the curb with a writing of divorce, and he can then get him a new wife. And then it goes on to say that wife who has the writing of divorce, if she marries another man and then he's not pleased with her, and it says they disobedient, they do something. If he's just not pleased with her, most of the time when it's talking about if the man is not pleased with her, is if she ain't giving it right, not pleased with her. But if the woman is divorced a second time by that second man, the first husband cannot marry that woman, that first wife again. And the reason why is because she's been defiled by another man. Even though she was in marriage to another man, she is considered defiled to the original husband because another man has slept with her that's different from the first husband. She's defiled. That's what this book says. That's how they treat it. Now the man is never defiled. He can have as many wives as he wants. Solomon had 300 wives and 700 concubines. He can bang as much as he want to bang. He's never considered a prostitute. He's never considered any of these things. He's never defiled. It even tells women that in the process of childbirth, you are defiled. You're impure from having a baby. Just you having a baby. You know how today, most Christian women will say that having a baby is beautiful. It's a miracle. It's all of these things. But the Bible actually says that it's an impurity and that you're unclean for 8 days. Then on the 8th day, you can be clean. You're then clean. So you're unclean for 7 days. And on the 8th day, when you do your washing, then you're clean. That's the man is never unclean when it comes to that. Only the woman. The only time a man can become unclean in dealing with a woman is if the woman is married to somebody else and they have sex, then he's going to get killed. But unclean. So let's stick with unclean. Unclean. If a man has sex with a woman while she's on her cycle, then the man becomes unclean. If he touches anything that she has touches, he becomes unclean. But he's becoming unclean because she's considered unclean. You see what I'm saying? Sounds like a man with a small penis. Yes. Look, every time there's multiple times it talks about if a man don't like, he don't like her, he get rid of her. It's hard being real. Sometimes it limits your reach. Oh yeah. Yeah. Folks do fall in love with a lie. In my family, my mom, that menstrual cycle. Yolanda, you're exactly right. The menstrual cycle women can become, they're unclean all the time. Only time we talk about a man being unclean that has something to do similar to that is if we have semen leakage, which when does that happen? That's very rare. That's not an every month thing. Now, in my family, my mom thought that her husband's needs were more important than her children. Biblically, she thought this was right. Okay, you're going to not like me in just a second for that one, Blair. But hear me out, Blair. Hear me out. Okay, hear me out. This is how I look at that whole situation. But it's not just on the husband needs. It's both the husband and the wife needs. To me, the husband and the wife needs are more important than the children's needs. They're more important than the children. In the sense of this. Now, if you got a good husband and wife, they recognize that they do have to sacrifice certain things of themselves for their children. Because the children didn't choose to come into this world. You chose to bring them into this world. So it's your responsibility to set these kids up and to give them the best life that they possibly can. But as far as the relationships are concerned, it is more important that that couple date each other, love on each other, entertain each other, grow with each other than it is for the kids. Like I was one to, I lived in Florida, want to go on vacation. My kids went on 1 or 2 vacations a year. But me and their mom, we went on about 3 or 4 vacations without them jokers because that relationship was more important. than them jokers going on vacation. Now I say that for this reason. Now the relationship didn't work out, but I still hold it true today. My kids know that me and Angelina's relationship will supersede theirs. Like, I'm not going to sacrifice to a certain degree for them. We may sacrifice together for the kids, but there are limitations to it because my kids have all the adults. Everybody's going to leave you. Let me just simplify. Everybody's going to leave you except the person who is trying to be your spouse. That's the only person who's trying to be with you for the rest of your life. Right? But there's some intricacies in there, though. Understand? That doesn't mean you mistreat the kids or anything like that. But I'm certainly going to, especially at this juncture, with my kids being adults and her kids being adults, I'm going to do more for her than I'm going to do for the kids. And for me, if the woman is not doing more for me than she's doing for her kids, we ain't going to work because them kids going to leave you. I'm trying to be with you for the rest of your life. So now, do I mistreat any kids? No. If she tried to mistreat kids, there was a woman that I was dating, and she showed that she wasn't trying to be around my kids, and was trying to, and was not only was she trying not to be around my kids, but she was also doing that thing where every parent shows their children favoritism over the other blended family kids. And we weren't married or nothing, but there's a certain level of balance that you got to have where everything you do and your first thought is always your child. You don't ever think about my kids. Oh, to hell with you. And that's harder for women than it is for men. Men easily just like, hey, I deal with whoever's in front of me. But it's really more difficult for women to understand because, and in my coaching, I've seen this a lot, where women have a hard time understanding that one, this man is trying to beat you for the rest of your life. Two, if you showing way more favoritism towards your children than his children, and y'all are a blended family, which I'm gonna do a video about that today. Blended family, that's a problem. At some point, he's gonna be like, all right, go with you and your kids. And I've been in that situation where I've had to tell women, okay, well, I see now your kids got too much rule and too much voice in this house that I'm paying bills. I'm paying the bills for, and I'm trying to, set them up to have a better life. But you let these mothers just say and do whatever they want to do. That shit ain't gonna work. But I see that you say you understand. But there is a balance to it. Real talk, these principles are the extreme opposite of American ways. This is why we devalue our women today versus uplifting and protecting them. It is. People follow these stupid ass values. The values of this book. This is why I said earlier, the Hebrew Israelites are the worst ones as far as the Black community that I see in this. Next up after them would be your Jehovah Witness, and then your Seventh-day Adventists, and then all your other regular denominations. And it's foolishness. It's a man's world. Lies, destruction, and misdirection is part of the Bible and believe. A lot of non-believers, a lot of believers over, and they run right on over this cliff, right over the cliff. They fall for whatever this book tells them that they should do. When I was deaconing, I was doing my deacon thing. That Kennesaw Baptist Association, which is about, at that time frame, about 40, 50 different Baptist churches in Cobb County and also adjoining county, Bartow County, and all that. They were hard up. That Second Timothy, and was it Second Timothy? No, Ephesians 5, Colossians 3, 1 Timothy 2. Suffer not your women to teach or speak in the churches, but to remain silent, for she shall not usurp the authority of a man, if she has any. For who was the first to transgress but Eve? And if she should have any questions, to ask her husband in private at home. So them jokers was hardcore about that. You know, that women preaching, they wasn't going for that. Mm-mm. Even on what they were at originally on what was Women's Day, a woman could get up there and talk, but the sermon was given by a man. Only thing a woman could do was serve, you know. And I was like, a bullshit. It's not happening. But they go for that. You know, they go for that, and they will push that. They will push that narrative. You know, women didn't have a right to vote in this country, and most countries, for a long ass time, they didn't have rights simply because they were a woman. And a woman, based on this book, doesn't have any integrity. Like, oh, somebody said it earlier, the testimony of a woman actually hurts your case. If a husband was jealous and was thinking that the wife may have slept with somebody else, doesn't even have to have proof. That baby could very well be his, but they would give her a test that would cause that if she was pregnant, would cause her to have a miscarriage. It's not proof that the baby was his or not. If she's pregnant, it's going to cause a woman to have a miscarriage. Point blank, period. And if she did, then she was guilty. She was guilty. It's not the Bible that teaches us that. It's the man's world, but it's the man's interpreters. You don't need interpretations for some of this. You don't need interpretations. It just says it straight out. It just says straight out, women be silent in the churches. Don't talk. You cannot usurp the authority of a man. There is no interpretation of that, but women be quiet. Don't say nothing. You can't teach. You can't take the authority of a man. There's a verse that says that women dressing like men and men dressing like women is an abomination. That's not an interpretation. That's straight up, Yolanda. When it says in Exodus that if a young maiden is in the city and she's sexually assaulted by a man, if she screams, then only kill the man. If she don't scream, kill both the man and the young girl, you know. And if she's in the country, the only reason you're not going to kill the young girl is because nobody was around to hear her scream. So if a woman's been assaulted, and some women go into shock when that happens, and they don't say anything, they out of body experience it. But she got to be killed if she's in the city and don't scream. That's basically saying she asking for it. For it to be assaulted. And then if she is assaulted, there's another situation where if she's a virgin and she's not betrothed to another man and she's assaulted by another man, and they've changed the word to mean seduced now. And then the man pays the father 50 pieces of silver. But if the father refuses to still let him or her be married, he still has to pay the bride price. And then that girl, if the father does give her, that girl has to marry her assailant and then provide children for him. And then even if he marries other women, she still has to, and y'all know I repeated that one plenty of times, she still has to bear him children and he still has to take care of her. Because I have a massive ass problem with that verse. That's not an interpretation. That's just what it says. That's just saying we don't value you women. Women are not valuable, you know. And here's the thing. This is why you can tell the books are not written as far as in chronological order. The story, when is it? I think it's in Judges. It's in Numbers or Judges, one of the two, where Moses has this whole thing that what I was talking about earlier. Moses has this whole dealing where, okay, if a woman is left and she's widowed, don't have sons, instead of the properties that being inherited by her, it would go to the brothers or the uncles or cousins or whatever that women couldn't inherit. But these four women pleaded their case, and then they was able to inherit stuff, right? If that's the case, then why is it when we get to the story of Ruth, when Naomi's husband is dead, her sons are dead, and now it's just Naomi, Oprah, and Ruth. Oprah goes back to her family. Naomi and Ruth go back to their people, but Naomi and Ruth do not own the property or anything that Naomi's husband originally had. And Boaz had to trick old dude after he got that pum pum into allowing him to marry her, which also gave him the property of whatever Naomi's husband had. So if Moses had already made this law that says that women can inherit property, why didn't Ruth and Naomi get that property? Right? Because the law is there. Women are supposed to be able to inherit property if it was changed during the time of Moses. But we see that the story of Ruth is written where they don't get to do that. They got to get the gleanings and the edges, which if you was with us yesterday, Tuesday, what's today? Today's Thursday. Tuesday, we went over how the gleaming and the edges was left for foreigners and poor people. So it was left for the worst. They gave them the worst product. So it doesn't work. The authorships is so jacked up. It's as if the person who wrote Ruth forgot that there was that law, or that was a bullshit one-time occurrence, and that wasn't a new law in Christianity. In Judaism, that wasn't a new law. That it was a one-time hit, and they conveniently disregarded that whole situation. Right. Grand Rises Ramses. This book was constructed to control, not righteousness, most assuredly. And one of the first groups that this book has to control is women. Why? You got to control the women, because I don't want my property going to some child that's not really mine. Because they didn't have DNA testing back then. They didn't have DNA testing. Yeah. And they all are adding their own allegories to the book. They're all adding their own. They're writing these books at the time frame of what the laws were in their culture that day. So when Ruth and Boaz was written, when the book of Ruth was written, it was written during a time frame where women didn't get these rights that supposedly Moses had incorporated into the religion. They didn't. And here, the thing about it, a person can read wherever that story is. I think it's in Numbers. I have to look it back. I got it. It's one of these scriptures that I wrote down. It's either Numbers or Deuteronomy, actually. Numbers or Deuteronomy that whole thing with the sisters happened. I know it was done with Moses because they brought their argument to Moses. And Ruth is supposedly happening much, 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 much later than Moses. So either that was a rule they ignored, or it really wasn't a rule at all, and it's just some made up bullshit. This was essentially to the destabilization of African culture, which prioritized family and women. You can't say African culture in a general sense. You got to be more specific, because there were some African cultures that were just as bad, just as fucking bad, that dehumanized women in the same way. That place women in the same type of situation. The Zulu culture wasn't all that great towards women. Whereas you did have some cultures that were. decent towards women. The Ashanti was decent towards women, decent. But most cultures around the world, ancient cultures, I'm not one of those people who will sit there and be like, oh, Africans were doing so great and didn't treat women badly. The cultures in India were doing so great and didn't treat women badly. A bullshit. The Mongols treated women fairly. A bullshit. Ancient man treated women, in general, ancient man treated women poorly. Across the freaking board. Overwhelming majority. When you study most ancient cultures, all of them. When I was talking, I gave a brief thing about how the Zhonggu people are more than likely the ones who built the Great Wall of China, and they just traded off their daughters as political prizes in unification of, they were gifts. These women were gifts. The Kemetic people treated their daughters the same way. They're fucking gifts. British people, gifts. All these jokers, gifts. Women were treated as gifts. Oh, I want my tribe to unify with your tribe. I give you gift. I give you gift of my virgin daughter. You take my virgin daughter. You give me your virgin daughter. And we make peace. That's how these people were. Russians were the same guy. The Slavic same way. All these people the same way. Humanity has grown, evolved, adapted, gotten better in their morality. I try to tell them, but it's sometimes about the name of Jesus that have these folks in their awe. They won't forsake it to save their lives. And you're right. I know you said, let me say Kemet then. I'm telling you, David, fucking Kemet wasn't no better. The only time that women kind of got more respect is if they were royalty or if they would come from wealthy families. They got a little bit more respect, but even they were forced into marriages and shit. I don't know what the Bible says about arranged marriages, but it has always seemed so taboo to me and scary. Oh, the Bible says arranged marriages is what you should be doing. Like, men should come and offer for the marriage. The whole Jacob and Rachel thing was, hey, what's up, Unc? I want to marry my cousin Rachel because I seen her by the well and she was fine. I fell in love with her first day. I worked for me 7 years. I got you. They made an arrangement. They made a deal. They didn't ask Rachel if she wanted to be with that man. And then on the wedding night, his fool so drunk, he banged Leah. And Laban was like, hey, look, in our culture, the oldest daughter is the one to get married first. Because, we got to get them out the oldest first so that we can get to the young one. Because don't nobody want an old girl. And that mentality is still prevalent because I had a client. She was from Eastman, Georgia. And she was so stressed. And I was like, why are you so stressed? I mean, she was like, I'm like, you're a pharmacist. You make good money. You cute and everything. What's the problem? If I'm not married by the time I'm 27, then I'm an old hag. Like, what the fuck? What are you talking about? But they made deals. They are just like India. A lot of people from India, they still do that. They still do arranged marriages. Your deal making. But so I got to spend a lot of time with Russians for about 3 years, and I love them because they straight to the deal. We go, we make the deal. Okay, this is good for everyone. And after the deal, we go and we drink to the deal, and then we party. Okay, we celebrate. But they make the deal. The deal they. Them jokers make the deals. Gonna make this deal. It's good for everyone. Everyone loves the deal. You get to have these, and I get these, and everybody is happy. Okay, we're all happy. They will tell you that you're gonna be happy with this deal and convince you. And you be like, yeah, I think I will be good. Yeah, that sounds about right. I think I will be happy with that. I didn't think I would be happy with it, but the way you said it, say it with such confidence. Okay, it's okay. Don't worry about it. I can envision. I can envision that so much to learn concerning. Yeah. Oh, about the women are treated poorly by everybody in the ancient world. Um, wow, great topic. I and Kevin did this one years back. Looking forward to it. Denise, just to let you know, on the 27th, so next week on the 27th, I'll do my morning show, but then I'm doing an evening show with Kevin. So we're talking about relationships, between men and women. Uh, Next on the 27th, whenever the hell, what day that is, and we'll be side by side. But it's gonna be on both our platforms. That's why we're gonna be side by side. I'm gonna take my shit, his shit. That's right. Y'all heard Denise. Oh, you mean me and Kevin? Yeah. Well, we're doing it again. I heard Denise hit the like button and the share. Yeah, that is what some of them red pills are saying, that after a woman gets past 25, 26, that they are considered past their primes and getting old. Exactly. That's why he had to make sure. He had to do that for two reasons for Leia. One, they say she had a lazy eye. So, we've seen how in our reading of Leviticus, how they are so much about defects. Oh my God, defects. It's like, man, please, that ain't got shit to do with nothing. That has nothing to do with the quality of the person or the quality of the animal of your sacrifice. It's just something. It shouldn't be a hindrance, but it is. To them, it's a hindrance. And so these jokers, they treated women that way. And then she was older, so they had to get rid of it. So then this fool made a deal to work 7 more years, and he got her. And then the women treated the other women foul. Oh, Leia gave him the first babies. Rachel was like, hey, slave girl, come have sex with my husband, become his slave wife, and give him so I can have a baby. She didn't have a choice. And then Leia does the same thing. Hey, slave girl. Then they're making deals. What your son got? He got some of them, some plant. Oh, I'll trade you this plant. I don't know what it was. I think it was ambrosia or something like that. It was mandrake. It was something. I'll trade you this for a night with your husband. With the husband. Sarah like, Hagar, I'm 80 years old. Come give my husband a baby. And Abraham like, shh. Well, I know I believe in this God's blessing, but that young tenderoni, brown skinned Egyptian, yeah, let me get some of that. From the slave wife. So even the women treated other women poorly in this book. Kind of reminds me of Women's Lib, how all those Caucasian white women said, black women join us and we're fighting together. And as soon as they got what they wanted, black women, you're on your own. We used you up real good. Hypatia was treated very poorly by the church. Not sure what her age was or the real reason she was killed. Do you have any clue? I don't even know who Hypatia is. Who's Hypatia? I don't know who Hypatia is. Do you know if they still do arranged marriages in America? Does the Mormons community do that? I know they do arranged marriages in the so-called Middle East, Africa, India, and other places. Some Mormon groups still do it. Some Amish and Mennonites still do it. Some, very few, but it's some. Mostly in America, they don't. Now, here's the thing that you may not realize. Old money rich people still do it. I'm a million. You're a DuPont. we're going to have our grandchildren marry each other. They still do it. They make it seem like it's love, but they still do it. And you know, the little British, all them, the rich, the super rich, and the royalty still somewhat do it. I still don't understand how any sound thinking woman could follow any principles of Christianity when they've been systematically disregarded. I, your guess is as good as mine. It makes absolutely no sense that a woman would still follow this book. There's if I was a woman, you couldn't pay me to follow this book. Uh-uh. This book is filled with bullshit. It is filled with so much bullshit. I mean, so and you couldn't convince me, oh, that's Old Testament, so I'm not. But they still utilizing some Old Testament mindsets uh, in order to treat you like trash. They say you're betrothed. I want to say brothel, betrothed to my wonderful rich son. You're welcome. Yeah, and these sons could be horrible. They could be violent. They could be, uh, just unemotional. All those things. It doesn't matter. It could, and we like to think like it's coming to America. Yes, when I first met your husband, I felt like I was about to met your dad. I was going to vomit. But then over time, we fell in love. So you see, my son, there's a difference between nausea and that line always stuck out to me like, okay, this is a great movie, but they didn't have to do, but I understand the arranged marriage thing was the catalyst of the movie. But, I was still like, okay. But there are places they still do that, especially when it comes to what they call royalty. They still do that bullshit. Right? I for one, no. I couldn't do it. And then how like women couldn't even participate really in the worship of their deity. Like women had to work as close as they can get as the entryway to the tent of meetings back in the day. So women really aren't even supposed to be going inside of the holiest parts of the church. Like y'all supposed to be in the vestibule. Right here. Right here. And then every time they took a census, whether it was in Exodus, or in Leviticus, or in Numbers, or in when did David take his census? I think that was in Proverbs or Psalms. It was in Psalms. They never count the women. And even when they say, okay, well, we're only going to count men who are 20 years old and older, so you don't count the younger boys. They never count the women. Now I understand the census when they're taking the census to see how much of an army they have. That's one thing. All right, you're trying to see the army size, military size. Got it. Understood. Don't count the women. But all the other censuses, women don't count. Y'all are immaterial. So even in trying to number the groups, and then when they're trying to do a census to see what the inheritances would be, women again don't count. They only count the men because y'all don't get shit. Y'all are not worthy. Even when we was reading the Gospel of Thomas, Even in the Gospel of Thomas, they supposed to be so enlightened. These not. So this is why I can't even get down with Gnostics. They supposed to be so enlightened. Oh. But what was that last verse in the Gospel of Thomas? The disciples crying, "Why is Mary with us? She should not be. She's a woman. Well, I will make her like you men." Because women shouldn't inherit the kingdom of God. Women can't inherit. You know, they say women can't inherit the kingdom of God. I will make her like you men. You're going to make her into what? Into a stud? So even in them, nope. There was a part where it's Numbers 31, 16 through 35. What was that one? That one was about dividing up the spoils of war, right? This is under Moses. After they whooped somebody's ass, the Midianites. Which is always interesting to me because the Moabites and the Midianites are pretty much the same people. I think the Moabites are the priestly side of the Midianites. So, no, it's one or the other. It's something like that. So Moses' wife is part of these Midianites, Moabite people, right? Which supposedly these people were devastated. They killed them all, right? So how do you get Ruth later on as a Moabite when they pretty much, when in Numbers, they killed all of them? Because it says they fought against Midian. The Lord commanded Moses and killed every man among their victims, and then names of people. They killed the kings of Midian. They also killed Balaam, son of Beor, and his sword. The Israelite captured the Midianite women and children and took all the Midianite herds, flocks, and goods and plunder. They burned all the towns where the Midianites had settled, as well as their camp, as all their camps. They took the plunder and the spoils, including the people and the animals. They brought their captives the spoil and plundered Moses. Eleazar the priest and the Israelites assembled in their camps in the plains of Moab, right? Plains of Moab, by the Jordan across from Jericho. So the Moabs and Midianites, same damn people. So they get ready to divide up the spoils. So it's like, this is how they do it. This is how they do it. Moses and Eleazar, the priest, and the leaders of the community went to the meeting for them outside the camp. Moses was angry with the officers of the army, the commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds who returned from battle. Have you allowed all the women to live? He asked. They were the ones who followed Balaam's advice and enticed the Israelites to be unfaithful to the Lord in the Peor incident. And the Peor incident is when these Israelite men were getting down with these Midianite, Moabite women, and they was starting to worship their God, right? Because that pum pum is that good. See, that's the problem they have with y'all. The pum pum too good. And they believe a plague happened. But anyway, to the unfaithfulness of the Lord in the Peor incident, so that a plague struck the Lord's people. Now kill all the boys and kill every woman who slept with a man, but save for yourself every girl who has never slept with a man. Let me get to the number. I was saying, anyone who has killed someone and touched someone who was like killing them, okay, they have to stay outside the camp. But if you had touched a dead person, then to the time of purification. So they given the water to clean themselves. Dividing of the spoils starts at 25. They counted all the animals captured. The sheep. The Israelites have. Where we get to the women at? So the plunder remaining of the spoils of the for that of the soldier were 675,000 sheep, 72,000 cattle, 61,000 donkeys. Now, mind you, and this is what it says, and 32,000 women who had never slept with a man. 32,000. women who had never slept. 32,000 virgins. These are 32,000 youngins. Now you think about these people back in the day. We are talking about probably from age at max 18. At max 18. I'm probably giving them too much. It probably should be max 16. Down to newborns. 32,000 Midianite women. Little girls. Let me stop calling them women. 32,000 little girls. And here's the thing. They half share of those who fought in the battle. So half of them go to the people who fought in the battle. Right? And when it gets to the people in verse 40, it says 16,000 people were given to the men who fought in the battle, of whom the tribute for the Lord was 32. So at least 32 women were given to the Levites, to Aaron, his priest. So they got 32 Vestal virgins. Said the flowering age 9. Well, I'm gonna give it a little more. Like one of my daughters didn't start hers till she was 16. I wasn't mad. It's like good. The later the better. The other one was 12. So these jokers, how does a woman read that and respect this book? I know it's back in the day, but I don't care. It doesn't matter. Oh yeah. The so-called men of enlightenment look down upon women. What's worse, their early church fathers, Irenaeus, looked down upon women. Aristotle considered women to be inferior to men. I heard there were many female philosophers during the past, but they failed to gain esteem. Yeah, they did. It's very few women who were able to gain some level of esteem back in the day. They treated them like trash. Let me see if I can find that food. I'm sorry. Like somebody walk around like that. Where? Let's see. How you spell that? Let's see what I can find. Because Irenaeus says some jacked up stuff about women. Because he said he's just like straight up blaming women for every evil that's happening in the world. Let me change the program of what I said. I'm gonna have to find it different. but I know he rejected women priests, women teaching. Um, I can't find it real quick. It's irritating. I know Tertullian was hostile towards women as well, which is one of those church fathers. He thought that women um, wouldn't be redeemed at the same they would be, like men would be. Hell, I can't find it. I have to find out later and do a video about that. But yeah, let's see. No, and Nikki, it should not. But back in the day, it shouldn't, because this Bible is supposed to be for all time, the same all time, and that means that his Old Testament word should be the same for all times. And not a woman only got a name if there was something important that she had to do, and most of the time she was the victim of something, right? And everything goes through the male. The matriarch, your matriarchal lineage don't mean shit to these people. And see, one of the problems is that these men don't realize how to have a balance between masculine and feminine. You know, I always teach that everybody has masculine and feminine energy, and within that, you are to balance your masculine and feminine energy. When it is out of balance, then you become more of a danger to society, to yourself, to your family, and you that's not the purpose of your growth. Your growth is to become balanced. That's why I got to get me another necklace that I can put my unk on, because that necklace, I broke it I don't know, I was pulling on it and I was messing with it and it broke because I pulled it too hard. But anyway, it's all about balance between your masculine and feminine energy. The idea of relationships of people is you should find a balance between your masculinity as a man and the woman's femininity as a woman. And in doing so, y'all find balance. You should already have balance within yourself. If you don't have balance within yourself, then hopefully that relationship can develop the balance within yourself so that y'all can have a balanced relationship. But there should be some personal growth within that. And most people don't get that. You know, these dudes who are trying to be all male in charge, when I see like the Hebrew Israelite men, all I'm looking at is a bunch of fucking Charlie males. And a Charlie male thinks that he's an alpha, but he's not. And he tries to rule with a heavy hand. You know, they tell their women that they're supposed to always be in subjugation to the man. That as their husbands or as their priests, that the women are supposed to follow whatever that man dictates. They are not able and shouldn't be able to think for themselves. Who are they but just women? That's their mindset. And it hurts my soul when I see women fall for this. Because I'm like, you are greatly more powerful than that. And I see these males as being weak because only through force and physical strength can they show their manhood. That was another group. So I had went to Waycross, Georgia, and I was like, I saw that back in the 90s. I was like, hell no, with Dr. York. And I was like, this is some bullshit cult. You know, because I had got some of the pamphlets. A friend of mine had given me some. He was a friend at the time. Gave me some pamphlets for them. And then when I found out they was in Georgia, I was like, oh shit, let me go down there. And I went down there and I was like, oh, there's some. At first I thought, oh, cool, the unity. Then I started really delving into it. I was like, nah, this some bullshit. Oh, David, 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 David. I'm not. Don't take this the wrong way, but take it in the way of good constructive criticism. He says these European standards are destructive to original people. The original people didn't have great standards either. Right? They weren't there. Uh, Native American tribes it was incredibly rare for a woman to be a chief. A woman couldn't be a chief in Native American tribes. Women couldn't be warriors. Women couldn't be hunters in Native American tribes. Women were married off to other tribes. Women didn't have all these, they didn't treat women, the Native American tribes didn't, Native Americans, Native Africans, they didn't treat women so at all peaceful. They relatively had the same standards. And understand, from an agrarian, from a hunter-gatherer status, might made right. And that was their mentality. Might made right. If I can defeat you in battle, if I can defeat you, if I'm a better physical hunter, physical gatherer, physical whatever, my physicality determined your subjugation to me. So the native tribes weren't any better. They weren't. They didn't reach enlightenment. Right. It's like Nikki just said. It's not about race. We were sold into marriage. We were commodities. And in most cases, women in most cultures, ancient times, commodities. Shit, women just stopped being commodities and burdens in the last like 50, 70 years. Is it about 50 years? Because even in the 1960s, 1950s, 40s, all that kind of stuff, you wanted some man's daughter, you need to pay a dowry. Even though I will still do it out of respect of speaking, but I was still different. I'm not going to just ask the father. I'm asking father and mother for their blessing. I ain't asking for their permission. I'm asking for their blessing. If I'm going to marry somebody, I'm asking for the blessing. Don't give a shit about their permission. Because even if they say no, okay, man, I'm just trying to be nice. I'm just trying to be respectful, that sort of thing. Right? So it cut off. Really, did you know, Angelina? I'm being respectful. But back in the day, that shit was straight up. If you didn't get the father's permission, didn't give a shit about the mother's permission, but the father's permission to marry somebody's daughter. If you didn't do that and y'all married anyway, y'all had to run away. I'm pretty sure, Angela, really, did you know, you can probably find out about eloping. That could be one of your videos, where eloping came from. And I wouldn't be surprised if it came from the fact that when people didn't get the father's permission, they ran off. But that's what I said. How is it that we had queens documented across certain groups? Royalty, the only way a woman got some level of respect was through royalty. And so you would have a queen, but that queen usually had to have a king. And the only time, and most of the time, when you had a queen that ruled, her rule was generally temporary, right? It was temporary. I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. I'll give you an example. Um, we like to think about Nefertiti, right? And how she ruled. The only reason Nefertiti ruled for the time frame that she did is because her son Tutankhamun hadn't come of age yet. Once he came of age, Tutankhamun then became king, pharaoh. He became pharaoh, but he was only he only shared some powers with Nefertiti because he was only concerned with war fighting at the time, which is why he died. One of the reasons he died young. But Nefertiti only ruled because her son was too young to rule. In many cases, that's the only time a woman is ruling by herself. Even old Elizabeth, the only reason she never remarried, she only became queen because one, her husband died, so she wasn't in charge of shit until her husband died. Then she became queen, and she had real power. She had influence, which is a form of power. Then, even though Charles and them came of age, she never remarried. If she had married the dude who was a duke, he would have become king, and he would have usurped her authority. And then, if they had a child, his son could possibly come before Charles. But so she never remarried, and and for that reason, so that she can maintain her power. In most of these cases, no, the queens, they were submissive to the king, right? And even at that, look at Henry the Eighth. Henry VIII killed what, 8 wives? Killed 8 of them. Being a queen didn't guarantee you didn't have all this power. You were still submissive to a king. And in some kingdoms were looked down upon because they had a queen who was running things. Hatshepsut was a queen. The kids were too young, but then they got rid of her ass too. Even though she was doing a great job, they got rid of her. You say the first woman chief wasn't until 1985. That's a damn shame. So these original people weren't that great. And then, yeah, how in the Bible, if the husband dies and they don't have any kids, then she gets passed on to the next brother, as long as he don't have whatever brother that doesn't have kids and hadn't been married yet. Yeah, there's some differences, but most of them did not treat women fairly. And most of the time, a woman didn't just become king. She wasn't ruling shit. She was the queen under a king. Do I think things may go back to a matriarchal before patriarchal took over? When were things matriarchal? When was the majority of the world matriarchal? I've heard that argument before, but I cannot find a time frame in history, in any group's history, in almost any group's. Actually, I haven't found a time frame in any group's history where society was matriarchal. You might have small little pockets here and there of people, like one small group over there. But even that, I can't even find those. I can't find those. I mean, if you can find them, help me out, Christian. But when were we matriarchal? Because from the oldest histories that we have come from Asia, the Levant, and Africa, and these they were never matriarchal. But I don't think will we flip to a matriarch? It's possible where women rule the world, but I highly doubt it. I highly doubt it. Simply because of the military. Militarily, the military will never be matriarchal. I mean, I know it doesn't take much to pull a trigger, to fly a drone and all that, but ground fighting is always going to be a part troops on the ground, boots on the ground, and that's not going to work. You pit a military squadron or platoon of women against men, ain't gonna work. Yeah, the higher social classes it becomes more exceptional, but even in them, they still subjugate women. Yeah, Jezebel defended her husband and was given a bad name after that, and now she's called a whore. A whore. You have that Jezebel spirit. Do you think there was a time when society was more matriarchal in which women and men were looking as equal and men paid more homage to the mother goddess as a vehicle of creation? No. And I say that plainly that even when there was a mother goddess, there was always a father god, you know. And I understand you're saying about balance. I'm thinking you're meaning about balance, but they still were out of balance. It was still out of balance. The woman still did. Even when you go back to the Anunnaki, uh, An and Anu were still, even though they had the mother goddess, the mother goddess still wasn't prevalent. She didn't supersede or was in balance um, to the father god aspect of it. Whether it's Zeus and Hera or Gaia, they still Jupiter and Gaia. They still the male was still dominant. I doubt if there was an ancient war between men and women. Um, there's nothing that would suggest that is it possible? Sure, but it would have been. I think it would have been more isolated. I appreciate that. Yeah, I try not to insult people. That's why I try to preface certain things that I think things that I think could be insulting to someone. I try to preface it. I think we're moving backwards. What little independence we gained by women over the last 50 years will be overturned. In America, nah, I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, you have so like when I was in the Marine Corps, I was one of those guys, and I was like, look, these women shouldn't get paid. Well, not getting paid. Getting paid the same rate is fine. They shouldn't get promoted as quickly. They should have a more stringent promotion process than mine because they can't do everything that I do. You know, but it wasn't until I understood the value, and that was when I first went in. The more and more I understood how war fighting happens and works, and I saw how important every aspect of it was, then I kind of let that part go and realized that if a woman is working in the supply chain, she's just as vital as the guys on the front line. Because without that supply chain working, the guy in the front line is going to lose. So all aspects are important. The ones working in communication, very important. Yeah, so I kind of let that go. I don't think women will lose their like rights to vote, their rights to run for office, and um, hell, drive. Uh, equality in court, justice, court in the courts, or things of that nature. Actually, I think women today, depending upon what area we're talking about, shit, women got more rights than men. I wouldn't even talk to a woman when I was in the military because back when I first came in, if a woman just claimed sexual harassment, you lost. You was guilty. If you couldn't prove your innocence, you was guilty as hell, and your career could be jacked up. So I ain't talking to none of them. A part of me was actually happy that my first 3 years was in a unit that was all male, no female, and I tried to deal with them as least I possibly could. because I was literally terrified that any woman could claim anything, and I was ass out. So I left it alone. This thing is breaking up in the end. But yeah, it was. I don't think y'all will lose any rights. I think y'all have enough male support that you wouldn't be able to. I know when you listen to YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, all you hear is people, men don't support women, especially black men don't support women. Black men don't. Everybody's against the black woman. And I heard somebody say that today. Everybody's against the black woman. I was like, no. You just have bad experiences, and only those who the worst situations are always put out front. But women have enough support by good men that women in general would not lose their rights. You remember when there was no sexual harassment policy in the military? That's a good and bad thing. Because obviously there was sexual harassment going on. So they needed those protections needed to be in place. Just like there was a time frame where there was no such thing as assaulting your spouse. Like a man could beat his wife, a man could sexually violate his wife, and she had no recourse whatsoever. It's good that those laws came into place, but like anything, they got abused as well. So the hardest part is deciphering between what's being abused and what's real. That's why I get so there should be punishments against those who abuse it. That would be one thing that pisses me off today. A woman can claim that a man assaulted her. If it's proven that the woman lied, we have nothing in place that puts that woman in jeopardy for lying. She just goes on about her life. That's bullshit. She should be punished for making up some bullshit, and that would diminish the amount of people who make these claims, these unsubstantiated claims. That would be the balance, but we don't have any balance. Yeah, women have more rights than men nowadays, but we need to find balance between them. There's not much in Black society that's not engineered outside of us. There's not much in Black society that's not engineered. So you're saying we engineer these things ourselves? Or everything is engineered outside of us? Other people are doing it. I'm just not getting that. I work in HR. Sex harassment is a huge thing. Even if the guy's innocent, they were still punished. Yeah, still are. I ain't gonna lie. That's one of the reasons why I spent maybe a total 3-4 years working in corporate. Because you can get railroaded like a champ. And so in those days, we could fight each other without repercussions. Early 90s. No, there was sexual. I was in from the early 90s. I went in 90. No, we fought. I was shit. That was when you couldn't say anything. If a woman claimed something on you, you was jacked. We could fight each other, men. Take them chevrons off, go to the back, fight each other, put chevrons back on. All right, it's settled. But I stayed away from women, and that's why I was so glad. Oh, you're gonna put me on this boat? Nothing but dudes. Can go over here to Liberia and then on over to Desert Storm. Cool. I didn't want to deal with them. Right, and the truth is relative in these cases. A lot of people, it's going to be based on what they think. We are engineered by other so-called groups. Unfortunately, the majority of the situation that Black society finds itself in is from what other groups engineered. The biggest problem I have with us is that there's a lot we can do ourselves to supersede what was put in place to hold us down. As a whole, we've allowed ourselves to be manipulated and believing in this melting pot. America is not a melting pot. It should never be a melting pot. The melting pot is become more European, become more Caucasian American. That's melt into that. Not we all just form this culture, but it's what is that one lady says? That little white lady, she's talking about something. She says America really should be a salad, different flavors coming together to make something great with respect to every flavor, not everything becoming one thing. Yeah. But we're not. It's like, oh, there's onions in here. I don't like onions. There's, onions need to taste like lettuce. Everything in here needs to taste like lettuce. Whether it's an onion, a pepper, a boiled egg, it needs to taste like lettuce. Chicken needs to taste like lettuce. But we should respect all the flavors. But we have been manipulated into believing that we should not enjoy our culture, be separate in our culture, but still be able to respect other people's culture, and those people respect our culture. Yeah. Like one of the things that I enjoyed about living in Europe is that when you was in Germany, your ass better, it's German culture. But the Germans didn't force the Turkish to act like Germans or the Kenyans or anybody else to act like Germans. It was like, this is the base culture because you came into it, but they still work together. But then you go over to France, the French, like, don't give a shit, this is France. We all might be European, but this is France. We all might be European, but this is England. You see what I'm saying? America really should be like that. Yeah, we ain't gonna separate. We are like that. Like this is Georgia. Like I can't stand y'all coming to Atlanta because y'all be trying to make Atlanta into your little New York or your little Chicago's and all that kind of bullshit. All right, this is Atlanta. But even within Atlanta, this is Black Atlanta, this is Caucasian Atlanta. You go up Buford Highway, you got Spanish Atlanta. You keep on going up Buford Highway, you get Korean Atlanta. Well, first you get Vietnamese Atlanta, then you get Korean Atlanta. Right? And when you go into their areas, shit, they do their own thing. But Black Americans, we try to be like white Americans, like Caucasian Americans. Hell with them. But our introductory and our history in this country is different from how the Asians or the Spanish have come into this country. They came into this country with their heritage and they keep their heritage, which is why, like where I live, this literally could be called Little Ethiopia over here, because that's what it's becoming, Little Ethiopia. It's a melting pot. Atlanta is somewhat of a melting pot, but we got separation. Like I was just saying, this Little Ethiopia over here, if you go over, you keep going down towards this one area, and it turns into Little Nigeria. You go to this one area, it's Little Liberia. But those are the people who came from that country keeping their culture. If your family's been here for 4 or 5 generations, you don't know that culture. The only culture you know is this American culture. And you're right, we are not helpless. The tribes that trace them through their mother, for example, the Hopi tribes is both matriarchal and matrilineal, and doesn't base superiority or inferiority over sex or gender. But they didn't have any women who were chiefs. Why didn't have chiefs? Why the women weren't running shit? The son still ran things. Still went through the son. Still went through the man. If it had not been for my mother and grandmother, I wouldn't have known my heritage. Yeah. Women today have been more concerned about keeping family together. It's part, to me, that's part of the balance. Like, even though my grandparents didn't have the best relationship, in my opinion, It wasn't filled with, their relationship was filled with more respect than it was filled with love, right? Uh, but when I look at that, my grandfather, and my grandmother believe in keeping the family together. But the nurturing and loving part of that came from my grandmother. The protection and providing part of that came from my grandfather. Like, I never heard my grandfather utter the word love in my entire 15 years of being present with that man. He never, I heard that about 2 months before he passed away, that he told my grandmother that he loved her. And that was the first time he ever said it. I heard that he said that. I didn't hear it myself. But that's the only time I've ever heard of him using that word. Now, I was told that he told my mother 2 weeks before he passed away that he was, he was proud of me, of who I was becoming. But he didn't tell me. He told my mom. So he was a hard man. My grandmother was a very nurturing woman, but it's through them, they kept the family, but she kept track of the family. When I did research on my family, she was the one who kept track of everybody and kept everybody close, and like, we're gonna go to Ohio for my grandfather's family and stay connected to them. We're gonna go to Carrollton and be connected to her side of the family, and then you get to learn, okay, you was a Shackelford, and these are all the Shackelfords, and they go back, and these are the Rosses, and the Rosses, from Alabama to Ohio, and they go back, and we figured, But my grandmother was the one who kept that on that side. And when I looked at my dad's side, it was my sister who kept it, who got it from his sisters, who got it from their mom, and so on and so forth. So they kept more of the records, And that's generally, Angelina fusses at me to this day. She fusses at me about, calling my mom, going to see my mom, spending time with family, with other family. Because men don't do that. We don't call nobody. My son don't call me, I call him. But my daughters, they'll call me in a heartbeat. But I know that the lineage will be kept, the knowledge will be kept by my daughters and not my son. He don't care. He cares as far as knowing, but he doesn't care right now. He doesn't care as far as researching. But hell, they ain't got to do the research. I did it for him. Got to redo it though, since I lost all my paperwork. My last military move, somehow all my stuff got lost. But and it's funny, I kind of expected it all to get lost. I researched most of my family, and it was my grandmothers who kept the family together. My Southern and Caribbean roots are strong. All right. Now, Caribbean people generally know more about their family lineage than North Americans. So let me get a little farther. Caribbean, Central American, and South Americans. But those people kept better records. These Anglo-Saxon North Americans, they didn't give a shit. Your grandmother struggled to say, use the word love. More of that tough love person. Yeah. I've talked to a lot of older people, and they said, they didn't have the convenience to be soft. They had to be hard because of how they was growing up, where they were growing up, the area, all that sort of thing. So to a certain degree, I understand. I don't like it, but I understand. I can't force them to have the mindset that I would have, because, by the time I came of age of recognizing, of having awareness, I wasn't dealing with nowhere near the level of restrictions and racism that they dealt with. Have you tried an OPM inquiry? What's an OPM inquiry? I don't know what that is. What OPM stands for. Am I freezing, everybody? Am I still doing all right? Nikki says I'm freezing. We're not gonna talk about reparations again. We're gonna talk about reparations, but I'm gonna do it in a different way on the conversation. Oh well. Oh, Office of Personnel Management. No, I haven't. No, I haven't tried that one. I'll look into that one. Let me write that down. Office of, what do you say? Personnel Management. All right, I'll look that up. My mother is from BVI, the race. Yeah, because it's British. Them Brits didn't give a shit about keeping records. You can do your military records on Ancestry. I know some of the records I found were from military records. Like on my grandfather's side, one of the ways I was able to track, I got to see certain members of his family fought on the Union side of the Civil War. So they had records of those people. And, of course they had records of those people because, they had pay stubs, they had pay records. They had issuing of equipment records. They had the units that they were in. And so when they had the unit, they like, where did they come from? And, they're like, I don't know, I'm from Dayton, Ohio. We was from this group of people and so on and so forth. So I was doing all this research before, right? And this is when the internet was first coming into being very well known. So it wasn't as easy. I'm requesting things from the Library of Congress and a whole bunch of different organizations in order to find certain records. Some of those Civil War, groups and all that. One thing would have been cool if you got family that came through Ellis Island, that makes things easier. Because Ellis Island kept decent records, unless you had a name that they couldn't pronounce. Then they just make shit up. Because one guy I was giving advice to, he was out of New York and he was able to go find the records of his family from Ellis Island, and it told him what boat they came from. The person had what country they came from, what country and city in that country that they came from. So he was able to, find his stuff pretty easily. Yeah, if you have family members who fought in the Revolutionary War, you can any war that if you can find a family member who fought in any war, those you'll be able to find those military records. And if you get their recruitment records or their induction records, you're going to be able to see where they say they came from, and you'll be able to track. Then you can go to that town and see what records that town has concerning them. And most of it is going to be like the purchase of land or something like that, or tax papers, and that gives you more information about them. And then, of course, if you're depending on your where they were from, you can go further back. there are some West African nations that have some records. Very few, but they are some that have some. Like I hit a dead end with my father's family. They were Dogons and they fought against another Mali tribe. They lost, and then they were sold to the Portuguese, who then to the Spanish, and they took them to Gaeta, Italy. Gaeta had great records. They had great financial records, and then that's how through their records they went into England and then into Scotland and then to Ohio Valley and then down to Mississippi to Alabama to Georgia. So, and I consider that to be lucky as shit, because most people you're gonna stop at some damn plantation somewhere or some sale, and if it may or may not have the boat, but if it does have the boat, then you can search. If the boat was a British boat, they were pretty decent at figuring out the voyages of those boats. It's pretty decent with them. Well, I'm gonna say the British, the Portuguese, and the Spanish was pretty decent at where this boat came from. But that might stop. You might wind up stopping right there. Yeah. So you can go look for them. And it's long, it's boring, it's hard. It's a lot of denial. People act like, well, we don't have it. You got to be an ass and pester the shit out of them in order to get more and more information. And then you might go, you looking at, you pick this line and you're going that way. You might go back a little bit and go that way. Because sometimes you can find something on a wife of a grandfather, of a great great grandfather. His stuff stops, but then the mother stuff continues. And you might choose, okay, well, from this point, I'm going to go with the mother. And then from that mother, you might look at both parents and see if there's more of a line through her father. Or you might keep down the mother. Flip flop. But as long as it's parents, it's still part of you. That's how I look at it. I've heard that the Mormons have an intensive records on the slaves. I've never been to the British Virgin Islands. Been to the American ones. Haven't been to the British one. And understand, most of these records were kept for tax purposes. It's all about that money. So even in my searching, I always kept in mind I'm following the money. If you follow the money, that'll help you track better, is to follow the money. Taxes and purchases of land and people. The damn taxes though, that's following that money. See, I want to go to Tortola and act like a pirate. Yes, it's stupid, it's silly, but that's my biggest impression, my mental impression of Tortola is pirates. Because if I was a free man back in them days, I would have been a pirate. Freedom. Seasick like a mother. We done got so far off the subject again, but it's all right. We at least went about a good 2 hours or so on the subject. But yeah, tracking your family, just follow the money. Like niggas say, I do that, but everything. That's what Tortola is known for. The pirates. Nobody know Tortola for its beauty. It's the pirating. Shit. The American Virgin Islands on St. Thomas. Their biggest thing is the pirate, Blackbeard or Bluebeard. Is it Blackbeard or Bluebeard? I think it's Bluebeard. One of them. He got a beard. That's a big thing. But that's what y'all gonna see me. Now that I have freedom, and once we get a few things squared away and I can travel more, because I haven't really traveled, especially in the last 2-3 years. I haven't traveled hardly at all. That cross country trip that me and my brother took our bikes on, that was the last big travel thing that I did, and that's been almost 3 years ago. But even prior to that, I didn't get to do a whole lot of traveling, because actually I went to the Virgin Islands, then we went cross country, and then my ass went back to work. But traveling is about to become a very common thing, and beyond just the Southeast or little road trips. Go places, but I'm even going to use Georgia. There are Native American things here in Georgia that I can go and I want to shoot, do the research on, and then do some videos about it, and then expand across America, then into some other places, and continue to go other places and bring y'all some history. Bring history. My thing is history, facts of history. That's the thing. Your mother was born in the capital of St. Thomas, in Charlotte, Amelia. I actually like Charlotte. I actually considered moving to St. Thomas. But it's too damn little. It's too small. Too small of an island. And housing costs too much. I would be pissed off with the level of housing that I'll be able to get right now in Charlotte, Amelia, in St. Thomas, period. So we're not going to that. Still looking at Puerto Rico. Wanted to leave and go to Puerto Rico at the end of January, but it's most likely going to be the following January. But then, depending on how things go between now and then, ain't no telling where it might be. You don't think Tortola have any hospitals? Oh, back then. Say, goddamn, how do you not have hospitals now? That's ridiculous. At least give me a clinic. And Puerto Rico got a big ass VA clinic, so I'm good. But I do want to do more traveling. Actually, y'all don't tell Angelina, but I'm gonna con her into maybe by the end of next January, getting the big ass getting the RV, and we just hit the road, do videos from everywhere, go to some of these Native American sites and shoot some videos, go to some of these alien conspiracy theory sites like Mount Shasta and do some videos from there. Go to the old Pueblo shit inside of the mountains, west side of the cliffs, and do some videos from there. Your mom was born in 1934. Woo. A long time ago. I don't even know what year my mom was born in. She just told me how old she's about to turn. So math is a beautiful thing. Calculators work great. Oh, so my mom was born in 1946. Oh, I'm going back to the Grand Canyon. I went to the Grand Canyon, but didn't really shoot a video there because I was with other people and the time was limited. But because we was only there for a day. And she had you when she was 45. Go ahead, lady. Go on with your bad self. But go to the Grand Canyon, go to the Southern Rim, then go to the Northern Rim, but spend a week or two exploring the Grand Canyon. What up, Chef? Grand Rising. That would be awesome. And then, of course, a week end up in any of y'all town and be like, hey man, come do this video with me. Oh no, Nikki. That whole thing about the Grand Canyon having hieroglyphics and having this cave and all this kind of stuff. We did a live on that one about a month ago. As far as any proof of any of that, it is all there's more information, more evidence that was a hoax, pretty much done by it's an Arizona newspaper, more so than anything else. But for some reason, the Arizona newspaper produced this story about this guy who supposedly found these things and then did a dig with the Smithsonian and all that. But the records indicate that the person that he claimed that the Smithsonian sent, that person doesn't exist. The person who said they found it, that person doesn't exist. There's no records of that person existing. And now, are there some parts of what helps it is the fact that there are parts of the Grand Canyon that's restricted. They say it's restricted for your own safety, but you can't trust the government. Be lying too. So, but there's actually hasn't been any photograph proof. There's nothing. There's no proof of that. But of course, people like to run with it. People even ran with it and said, "Oh, there's a tunnel in the Grand Canyon that if you take this tunnel, you'll come out in Egypt." That I don't even understand how people accept that one. I don't even get that. Coach Rings, all I was saying is that there could have been a time period in the past where men and women were considered as equals. Look up the archaeologist, anthropologist, Mahaja Gimbutas. It could have been in certain areas. That's what I'm saying, small. So my question was, are you thinking about it on a large capacity, or we're talking about a small capacity? I don't doubt that there's been some small kingdoms, tribes where it could have been more equal. But as far as the larger spectrum, I doubt that. She said that, because I don't want to butcher her name, Gimbutas said that we can't find an old Europe or in an ancient world where there is a system of autocratic rule by women and an equivalent suppression of men, but a structure where both sexes are equal. Yeah, it would depend on the size. I mean, I'm sure that there are small groups, that there might have been this tribe or that tribe, this kingdom or that kingdom. But for the most part, most of the records of larger empires and things of that nature, I haven't seen one of those. Yeah, but that's what they claim, Nikki, all the way to Egypt. It would be if you find it, let me know. If you find it, let me know. I just ain't seen it myself. Where there's that system in place. Shit, I think we might be closest. I think the closest empire that might be to that today is, the closest like world mentality of that is we're seeing that today, where there is more equality between men and women around the world. There are still some places where women are still subjugated in the same way that the Bible, the Quran, the Vedics, the Torah subjugated women. The Shinto, the Asian communities subjugated women like a champ, and in the same level as the Romans, the Greeks, the Persians, the Sumerians, all them jokers. The Zulus, the Mali, they all subjugated women. Just hadn't seen that. And even we used to believe, the Amazon women was ruling shit in the Amazons. Nope. We know that was a story that was fabricated based on the what was the Woman King movie, the Dahomey? So I don't think you're going to be able to find where a mass society treated men and women equally, and especially to the level of today. Women have way more rights today and equality today than as a massive group than any other time frame. Yeah. The Amazonians are a myth, but that myth was extrapolated from the fierceness and the fighting abilities of the Dahomey women. And it was the French or the Portuguese? I think it was the Portuguese were the ones who fought against them, and then they fought against the French too. And I think it was the French soldiers that began the development of the idea of the Amazonians. And then, like any kind of story, it gets bigger and bigger, and then it gets placed somewhere else, and all these sorts of things. It's kind of like mermaids. Mermaids was a story that was originally told by the people in West Africa. And it was a story that was told by, well, you had West Africa, you had the Greeks, and you had Caribbean people talking about mermaids. And then the story gets centralized to everybody's own group. You know, hell, the Greeks mermaids start having sirens and singing songs and delivering men to their deaths. And we saw that with the Iliad and the Odyssey. If you've ever read Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, in the Odyssey portion is when you get the mermaids and the sirens. In West Africa, they were just mermaids. The Dahomey had the fish people. I mean, not Dahomey, the Dogons. They had fish people. You have the Nomos over in the Indian Ocean area, and the Nomos was in the Dogons. You had the Nagas was in that whole Red Sea, Arabian Sea, Indian Ocean story. But fish people, everybody had their own fish people story. So where's their favorite fish people? Why is everybody talking about fish people? Now we know that the Caribbean, Florida, Gulf of Mexico people, they thought manatees were fish people. Some of them thought dolphins were fish people, and they developed their stories on those animals. We know dolphins are like everywhere in the world. Manatees are more of your Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico, but it's just interest. It's a thing called I forgot the technical term, but mind share would be one way of saying it. Your thoughts go into the ether, and somebody else picks it up from somewhere else in the world. Greek mythologies are a few powerful goddesses. Yeah. The thing about it is most of these mythical stories, there are very powerful women in a lot of these stories. The only thing is these women there's always a dang young man who supersedes all of them. You can have Diana, the great huntress, and all that stuff, but then she's superseded by Ares, or superseded by Ares. If it's Diana, then it's Greek, so it's Ares. Superseded by Ares, and then superseded by Zeus. How about the Dogons? How do they treat their women? Pretty much the same way Native American treated theirs. They have their place. They are given a little bit more respect than how some other ancient cultures were, but they were still subjugated to the man. They still were sold off into marriage, and they still didn't own land and things of that nature. So they were, you're better than some, but your better is still not great, in a sense. Like, in the same way, put it in this context. You have a large plantation in Georgia where the master is beating the shit out of his slaves, got a whole bunch of slaves, whipping the shit out of them. And then you have a little guy in a town in Atlanta So you got the guy out in Marietta, and he got a big ass slave thing, and he beating the shit out of slaves, and they toiling and working in the hot sun all day, and all that sort of thing. And then you got the guy who's in Atlanta, and he owns, a shop, and he got some slaves who works in his shops. Those slaves aren't beaten the same way. They're not working in the hot sun the same way. They got trades and skills that they're learning and that sort of thing. But they all still slaves. One's been treated harsher than the other, but they're still slaves. This slave has a better life than that slave, but you're both still slaves, and neither one of y'all got rights. You just get better treatment based on the fact of who controls you. So it's still the same. So these women, the Dogon women, might have been treated better than, say, the women in Libya, but they still not treated right. They still considered women. She may have a little more rights than this one over there, but you still ain't got as many rights. You're still not equal to a man, I should say. And that's the problem with these cultures, the ancient cultures, that their morality towards women was not great. Compared to how we think today, they were not great. They thought that they was right, but they still not great. We value, even though physical abilities are valued, we value mental abilities more so than physical abilities compared to those people. We will say a woman can do almost any job that a man can do. Right? Well, let me rephrase that. We will say a woman can do almost any job at the same level of any man, that they're equal in it. Like, I think Nikki says she works in HR. A man can be great in HR. A woman can be great in HR. It comes down to the individual. The sex ain't got nothing to do with it. Not one blessed thing to do with it. But if in general we compared men and women working on one of them road crews, there are certain jobs on a road crew that a woman is just not going to be able to do it. In general, a woman is not going to be able to do it as well as a dude. Like, when they still got to be shoveling that damn asphalt, you'll see that it's dudes doing that shoveling. And that stuff is all timed and in a synchronous order so that everything works as efficient as possible. You got to have somebody with the body is stronger and has more endurance to be doing that work compared to, a woman doing it. A woman will be on that crew, but she might be operating machinery or she might be holding that damn sign. But you don't see many women shoveling. Just like I was tripping 2 weeks ago. Was it 2 weeks ago? Yeah, 2 weeks ago was the first time in my 51 years that I ever seen a woman on the back of a garbage truck. And I'm not putting down the people on the back of the garbage truck, because I don't know about where y'all live, but them jokers on the back of the garbage truck is making like $30 an hour, $40 an hour down here. I don't know how much they make up there, but they make some good ass money down here. Now, let me not say 34. They making more around $20 to $30 an hour down here on the back of a garbage truck. If you driving the truck, you might be making about 30 to 40. But 2 weeks ago, the first time I've ever seen a woman doing it. Generally, men do that because of physical body. So there is a difference. But in general, nah. The women I know who work in IT are just as good as the men. I think because we desire connection with our hidden past, we tend to romanticize our ancestors. And that right there, that's the thing. Thank you for saying that, because we do. That's where that whole idea that our ancestors were these nice, good, moral people until they were corrupted by Europeans. Nah, them motherfuckers were corrupted on their own. I remember arguing with people, arguing with black people, talking about something like, where do y'all get this utopian society that black people were living in? And I understood it with the Nation of Islam people that I was dealing with, because they were saying, black people was all harmonious, and then Yaku did his experiments and he made white people, and then by utilizing leprosy and all this other stuff, and then the white people, they kicked them out, because they was disruptive, and they kicked them out to the hills. And Yaku took them to Europe, and they became violent and all that. And he brought them back into Africa, and they were disruptive, and so the leaders kicked them back out, and they had to leave and go to Europe, and that's why they so vengeful towards us, because their ancestors was kicked out and all this. And I was like, this shit sounds crazy as hell. But I was like, I studied you're African. I was looking into all the different African tribes, and I was like, them motherfuckers was fighting wars. They were, treating their women like shit. They were sacrificing animals left and right. A few were doing human sacrifices. They were just as jacked up. Okay. That's just human. Humans are just can be jacked up. Period. I have yet to find a utopian society. I ain't heard about one yet. Even when slaves escaped in South America and went into the Amazon and created their own cities and towns, they still didn't treat women equally in those societies. Women still weren't treated equally. And I'm like, and all you motherfuckers escaped from slavery. Y'all should be y'all should be the ones saying everybody contributes. Anybody can lead. Whoever is the best leader is just going to lead, period. Don't give a damn your age. Don't care nothing about your gender. If you the best leader, you the best leader. Simple as that. Sun Tzu did The Art of War, where it's really Sun Tzu really is trying to say the best leader should lead, but really he's saying the best male leader should lead. Women still cannot lead. And his stuff should have been pure on that. One of the purest ancient philosophies that I found that doesn't separate men and women were two. That's the Hermeticism and freaking the Tao. That's it. And the only two. Even your other philosophies, they still are male dominated. Much love to you as well, Eileen. Yep, humans been corrupt. We have to stop acting like all our ancestors were perfect and that we didn't do some messed up stuff in the past. Of course we did. They're humans. We're doing messed up things today. And 1,000 years from now, they're still going to be, the morality might be better 1,000 years from now if we still here. But there will still be some messed up things that we would do. African leaders is on a different level of torture of women. Man, look, I seen some shit. You ever seen that movie? I don't watch it. I don't watch it because it shows too many things that I actually seen with the whole Rwanda thing. Not Hotel Rwanda. Tears of the Sun. Tears of the Sun. And one of the scenes that they show in that movie, Tears of the Sun, which bothers the shit out of me because it's something I saw for real, is these motherfuckers, and I'm calling that purposely, was cutting women's breasts off because they were saying a Tutsi child would never suckle from these breasts, and they would cut these women's breasts off. That's some sickening shit, right? That don't even work. When you see these women coming into the refugee camps and they not cut their breast off and all this sort of thing, or they not cut a man's peen off because they're not going to father another Tutsi child, and the Hutus did it too. I mean, the Tutsis did it to the Hutus as well. It wasn't one-sided. All these motherfuckers did it. It was, I was like, how can people be so sick? I was a very angry young man because I was buying into black people have this higher level of consciousness, this innate level of morality. Because I was in my early 20s and I was buying into that bullshit back then. And only to see it, and I was like, oh hell no. There's some bullshit. Hell no. Anyway, I gotta move from that subject. I can't stay on that one. No, we can't stay on that subject. Gotta move on. But yeah, some of these African niggas ain't no damn better. And throughout history, some of these motherfuckers ain't been no damn better. You know, I know there was the miniseries on Shaka Zulu, but if you go research Shaka Zulu, and he didn't have any European influence, and this motherfucker was cruel. He was a cruel. I mean, he was a great general, but this motherfucker was cruel. Oh, yep. The world is in serious need of some common decency. It is, and I hope we've been on a progression, century after century. So I would hope that we continue that progression and not start going in reverse. Yeah, and that clitoral castration is horrible. And it's not just Arabs who do that. There's Africans who do that as well. Yeah. Shaka Zulu was off the chain crazy. And then when they talked Shaka about Jesus, he said, oh shit, I'm Jesus. He straight David Koresh them motherfucker. Like, I'm Jesus. I don't know what y'all talking about. Jesus and I, we are the same. We're brothers. When you tell me about Jesus, we are the same. He is my brother, eh? Yes. Joker thought that, oh, since he's Jesus, there shall be none after him. So that's why he killed his own child. Plus, he killed his own child because he rose up against his father. So he was like, my child ain't gonna rise up against me. So if I kill him, then he can't rise up against me. So he participated in a little bit of personal infanticide, whatever. I can't even say that word. I'm telling you, I had these 2 back teeth removed, and certain words I can't say them. I cannot say them. It's driving me crazy. I think I have an appointment on the 27th to have the little 2 fake ones put in back here. Then maybe I can say some of these words that I haven't been able to say since then. But yeah, and that's one of them I can't say. Somebody spell it out. Oh, well, yeah, I'm gonna look it up myself. I need y'all to do that. I just be trying to get y'all to do stuff. Was he almost? I'm not sure how tall he was. Infanticide. Okay. In my tongue, I see why. Infanticide, because the back up. And it flips. Got it. I don't know. How tall was he? According to what immediately pulled up, they're saying that he was about 6'2". No. That was the character who played him was 6'2". But I love that series. I watched that series so many damn times. That first summer it came out, when it was time for it to come on, I was in the house. Right, infanticide. Yeah, if I see it, I can say it, but if I'm not looking at it, I can't say it. I'll mess it up. I don't know if he was how tall. I can't. So far, I don't see anything that talks about his height. I know the actor who played him was 6'2". Thought I had something, but I didn't. Physical description of Shaka Zulu. Oh, some people say he spoke with a speech impediment. Isn't that something? It just says he was tall. Who referenced it? What are the references for this? Let me tell you the trick of Wikipedia, if you ever use Wikipedia, and I use that one for certain things, is to see where the references, the reference material, and then it's time consuming, but then go through the reference material to see how valid they are. Yep, it was a week-long series. Shaka Lunandi. Watch that thing. Oh man, y'all crazy. But y'all have been good today. I appreciate you guys. We're going to call it a day because I have some other videos to shoot. I gotta shoot some of these, and these. I'm not shooting all these today, but I'm going to shoot some of these today. Discussing how, because honestly, in order for, in my viewpoint, even though it's weird, on most of these social media sites, my primary audience is men. Men make up about 66, 67% of my audience, the people who watch these videos. And I understand the appeal of that because of the way I process information, the way I express the information. So I get it. I don't emotionalize information, so I might be boring to women in a sense. But I do want to increase the percentage of women that are watching these videos, because the most difficult thing is when you're dealing with society, our current society especially. Most of the directional path that our society is taking, it's more of a balance between men and women. Women have way more say in the direction of our society today than they've had in the past. So in order to change our pathway, to help change our pathway, to help those people who are questioning things, I need more women to wake up to the realization of these religions are not good for us. So that's one of the reasons why I thought to start doing a lot more videos that are based on that, based on women understanding how this book doesn't speak to them, how it shouldn't speak to them, and what it speaks about them. So I'm gonna start doing. There are gonna be quite a few videos done concerning that. But until such time, so you'll see some of those come out today. There'll be some other ones tomorrow. Actually, I think that whole thing we talked about, the primary subject matter we use on this one about JFAT, no, judges, not the JFAT one, judges, the cutting up the concubine and the treatment of women as far as the concubine and all that kind of sort of thing. I'm gonna do a separate video for that today. So you guys already heard it, but we'll talk more about it. But I thank you guys for being here. Appreciate you guys always. And we will continue to grow as a group, as a community. I appreciate everybody for sharing the videos and putting them out there. This is a great thing. So y'all have a great day. And somebody gave me some stars after the video yesterday, after the live yesterday. I forgot who that person. I don't recall who that person was. But if they're watching this video, I just want to say thank you for the stars. And some other people did some super thanks on YouTube, so I want to thank them for the super thanks. I appreciate you guys always for your gifts, but continue to share the video. So y'all have a great day, and remember always you got to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations, and we're out. And I'm hungry.